Okay, so in this video we're going to be discussing SNMP polling, and we're in section 4, and this is objective 403, and we're going to break this out into two parts: configure SNMP polling and F5 Analytics IAP. Alright, so objective 403 is to identify various big IP DNS monitoring strategies and some examples, configure SNMP polling, describe and use DNS statistics and DNS analytics. We will cover this using the F5 Analytics IAP. Okay, so let's dive into SNMP polling. Okay, so there's different types of MIBs that are found on the F5 device, and you can take these MIBs off the F5 platform and import them on your SNMP collector. So these transfer different messages from the F5. They're called OIDs, and they translate messages to a human readable format to properly understand. To find where these are placed, you can either do this going to the CLI and just using a program like WinSCP and going to this directory and downloading the MIBs F5 tar GZ and then the net SNMP one. You can also find this in the About section. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, so we'll go to cd user local docs MIB. Okay, and you can see our two main MIB files are gzip there. And then we can also go to the GUI and click on the About tab at the top, and if you scroll all the way down to SNMP MIBs, you can download these two files from the GUI as well. Okay, so F5 has these broken up by certain modules. So there's an APM MIB that contains the objects for APM. There's a common one for F5 specific SNMP traps, and then the Big IP Global MIB is for GTM objects such as wide IPs, virtual servers, pools, links, servers, and data centers. The local MIB is for LTM objects. System MIB, things like global statistics data, network information, platform information, and we have the WAM for Web Accelerator and EM for Enterprise Manager. Okay, and just a quick glance at, we just downloaded this locally to this machine, and you can use a program like 7-zip and you can see these 6 files in here. So if a quick glance at the global MIBs.txt, we can see all the object identifiers for GTM/DNS. This goes over the description text that we would recognize under the object type attribute. Same thing goes for common. This is F5 specific events like Big IP service down, service up, chassis supply power bad, things like that. And then the local MIB is everything associated with LTM. Okay, same process goes for the other F5 MIB file you can download locally, the MIBs net SNMP. So you can choose to copy over any one of these to your SNMP collector. Let's take a look at just host resources, for example. More of a system platform, so system number users, the system processes, and let's check out the IFT MIB, which is the list for our interfaces. So here's all of our if entry sequence we can filter by. So just trying to pick a good one here. If in errors, we can see the number of inbound packets that contain errors. Okay, so that's a brief look at the MIB files that are on the F5 box. So now we can view the objects in the enterprise MIB files by going to this directory, the user share SNMP MIBs. And this is basically the collection of all the MIB files in one place. So you can choose to sort in this location as well. So if we wanted to find anything related to a wide IP, for instance, how about grep for wide IP? Okay, and then you can see the object group identifiers for what you can collect for wide IPs objects. Okay, and for SNMP polling, there's also a great utility you can use for collecting and mapping particular OID pairs to a MIB file, and we can use SNMP translate. We use a few different flags here. So the output file here, we're going to indicate print OIDs numerically, and then we're going to do a trans optional for the enable MIB child OID report, and then we're pointing to what MIB file we want. Okay, so I'll copy that. Okay, so we've got the flags in here. We're pointing to our specific MIB, which we can point to any one, but we're going to do the F5 Big IP global MIB.txt. You can see it prints out our pairings, and this is a really nice way to demonstrate the subtree for the OID. So you can see it's, the top level .1.0 is tied to org, and it kind of keeps going down the list until we get to the enterprise level. So 136141 is the enterprise level. So that's here, and then F5 specific OID integer is 3375. So this whole piece will go before any F5 specific enterprise MIB. So you can see all the rest below the F5 are listed first with that whole F5 OID, and then the specific integer after, like the subtree. Okay. We could choose to do an SNMP walk based on any one of these OIDs, or because we know the F5 specific OID, we can just use that. So we'll use SNMP walk and point to the main public community on version SNMP 2C, and we'll point to our local agent, and then we'll specify the OID for F5. Okay, so it prints out all our OIDs and integer values currently. We can grep based on what we want. So if we have a specific object in mind, like the DNS underscore profile is tied to that listener, it's going to give us all the attributes based on the DNS profile. So we can see specific stats in our DNS profile for, there's not a lot of things going on right now, but if the login is enabled, the stats query responses, really nice command here. So yeah, you can get very creative with doing very specific tests, and maybe during a change window, if you're making a change to a specific particular object, and you want to see the queries and responses that happen normally, and then after the change, it's a great way to run a few commands to the F5 string, F5 OID specific string to that specific object. And also, if we know our specific OID, we can do print that output above the child OID report and just copy the specific OID we want. We'll quit out of that and hit up arrow, and instead of specifying just the global F5 OID, we're going to have the more specific OID. Okay, and you can see that we see that GTM attribute for topology is set to false. So real quick way to verify certain attributes and what their specific integer values for are at that specific time. Okay, so let's say you wanted to find out where a specific variable belongs to which MIB. You can run SNMP translate capital IR and then the variable, and we can identify that the MIB file that that variable belongs to is in the local MIB. We can additionally do the SNMP translate with the local MIB to find the specific OID. So we're doing a listing the child set, and this is based on the MIB file and the variable, and this will give us the specific object or specific OID. So we can use this to do an SNMP walk and validate the integer of that current value. Okay, so now let's talk about SNMP DNS traps. So traps is different from polling, where traps are initiated by the F5 DNS platform instead of polling, where the SNMP collector or manager is asking for information from the F5 DNS. So we can see this information in the alert.conf file, and here are some attributes. There are more specifically for GTM, but I pulled a few. We've got cert expired messages, will expire, the pool is available, not available, and disabled. So we can use the SNMP walk command again to verify those specific status messages. Okay, so let's look at the command line for that. If we go to etc alert d, and we'll do a cat alert.conf, which is the SNMP trap data, and we'll do a grep for GTM, and we'll do an additional 4 lines. Okay, so here again are the information that the F5 uses to send SNMP traps automatically. So these are based off the varlog GTM. So whenever there's a probe pool that changes from anything to green, there's an SNMP trap for it. Whenever there's, let's pick, these are all SNMP specific, but so whenever that cert expires for the device certificate, then it will send a trap message for that. Okay, so SNMP traps are again the F5 sending a trap automatically, or information about an object before the SNMP manager asks to collect that information. Okay, so we can actually test this, using an SNMP walk, and we'll grep on a GTM wide IP object, and more specifically we can grep on a specific wide IP object to see whether it's enabled. So we'll run a quick test just to show the SNMP trap behavior on the big IP DNS. Okay, so before we test the disabling the wide IP object, let's first look at that SNMP walk, and we're going to grep for, just run that again, grep for GTM wide IP, and this is going to list all attributes and strings related to wide IP. So we're going to get quite a few objects, all of our wide IP objects. Let's more specifically additionally grep for the star domain wide IP and grep for enabled. And this is going to tell us if it's enabled or not. Okay, so the current status for star.domain.com is enabled. Okay, so let's just jump back to the GUI. We'll quickly disable that. And jump back to the CLI. Okay, so we're going to jump back to the CLI and run the same command. Okay, and now you can see the interval is marked as disabled. Okay, so this obviously you can get very creative with what strings you choose to filter on. You can do a lot of different things and additional greps to see exactly what you want or expect to see on the SNMP manager. Okay, and you can also look in the GTM logs to see any SNMP traps that are sent. It's a good way to validate that they're actually being sent to the SNMP manager. Okay, you can see that our SNMP trap wide IP domain.com was marked as disabled, and that trap would be sent to our SNMP manager if we have one set up. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into SNMP traps. So SNMP traps are triggered when we actually receive an agent code from the syslog ng utility. So you can see in the alert.conf we only see the OID. We're not going to see the agent ID. The agent ID are actually in the big IP error maps.dat file, but that file automatically or dynamically updates the rest of these .h files. Okay, so to actually find the alert ID, we can browse through any one of these .h files, and you can see this alert ID. So when syslog appends via the syslog ng command, and it writes the message to that, if this message matches, or if this alert ID matches one of these .h error map files, then it will trigger the alert D process. Okay, so let's test this out on a alert code message for GTMD SSL cert expired. So we again looked in the alert.conf file and grep for SSL. So we're just going to pull a specific alert message out of there. And now we're going to grep for that error code inside all of the .h alert code files. Okay, and now we can see what the log severity is and the log level is for that specific alert. Okay, and to test the SNMP trap process, we can use a logger p command, and basically the logger local 0 will go to LTM, and it will signal a SNMP trap. Okay, so we're specifying the alert code that we identified in the .h file, specifying it here. 2 is the critical syslog state, which matches our h file, and we're going to run this logger p command with the appropriate description. And the %s just means it's matching, it will match on any string. Okay, and this message will show up in the LTM log. We can do a grep for SNMP trap, and you can see this specific message will be generated in syslog, which in turn, because it has the proper alert code, it will then trigger alert D to send the SNMP trap. So it's a great way to test out certain SNMP trap messages.